Good afternoon and welcome to the Capital Investment Committee for Thursday, February 27th. We have got lots of guests in the audience. Welcome. I'm going to go right to the agenda. First item on the agenda is, well, before that, the approval of minutes for the January 23rd, 2020 Capital Investment Committee meeting. All right, I have a first and second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 2, discussion concerning the Jordan Branch Stream Restoration Project located in the Cool Springs East subdivision.
So this was recently on a work session. Would you like to go through the presentation again, or do you feel educated on it?
We've seen it. I would assume the people in the audience who are here for it probably know what it's all about as well. But I'm fine either way. Eric, what do you want to do?
Do you want to give just a brief,
We can
maybe
do
overview?
We'll just briefly go through it. So this is a project that, if you could pull the presentation up and just flip through, that it dates back to 2014. It's a issue that's been in the HOA ever since it was built. And essentially, they've been coming to the city asking us to help and partner with them to try to get the stream banks repaired and stabilized to the best of our ability. And we looked at it and said, you know, we're willing to try to take this project on, and brought it ultimately to the alderman who approved us to move forward with the design of it. So we went through the design process. It's located in a 60-foot public utility and drainage easement, and the design got completed. We went to bid 3 times on the project, and we really struggled at getting contractors to bid. We'd find them that they were interested, but they'd always back out of the project, mainly because of access issues and not having the ability to get back there in the room to work, and it just wasn't worth their time or effort. And so we tried 3 times. If you go back one slide, actually, you can see some of the erosion that's taken place there. And if we then go forward, it shows an exhibit showing our survey compared to the survey back in 1995, that this has always been in this condition ever since it was developed. Now, it's probably had some additional erosion over time because there is a significant drainage area that does drain to this area. So the way we kind of look at this is, typically in a drainage easement, our responsibility is to maintain positive flow of water. The trees aren't necessarily our responsibility. And to put that in perspective, we have drainage easements on streams and rivers, and we can't possibly maintain all the trees. But what we typically focus in on is trying to maintain that positive flow through the subdivision. But with that said, we decided to try to take the project on and failed at getting bids for the project. Ultimately, we went through the CIP process, and the funding had previously been in the engineering department's capital budget. And we went through the funding process. This dropped out of the funding range and was not funded as part of that. And I believe it ranked number 24 and 29.
It was just outside.
In that process. And so we've listed 5 options on how to proceed at the end of that. And it's, essentially, the city could try to fund it and move forward with it. The HOA could take it on at their cost. The HOA could attempt to partner with the city and remove the trees and let us do whatever grading work we need to do in there to stabilize the banks. Option 5 is ultimately they could continue to do what they've done for many years, which is simply just removing some of the problematic trees and address them one at a time. So if one's in jeopardy of falling right now, what they do is they just hire someone to come out and remove that tree. Yes, ma'am.
So part of the direction I think we got from when this was presented to the board at work session was to bring it back to this committee to talk a little further about how we might move forward, which option might make sense, see if the neighborhood, the HOA, was willing to partner in some way in terms of contributing. They are the ones that have the bid for the tree removal component. We do not. We don't know that much about that bid, except for it came through, I believe, the property manager. So we're not sure exactly how that's working, but really sort of look at what the way forward might be between options and funding partnership. And I think staff has had some discussions with folks from the neighborhood, but I believe we may have some of them here tonight or today. So if we want to hear, I'm not sure there's any specific offer about any contribution to any component, whether it be the tree removal or some just general contribution to the project, except for that they're asking the city to fund one of these options. So I think that's kind of where we are. I'd welcome you to any other questions you might have, or if we have folks who want to address it from the neighborhood, we'd be glad to hear from them.
Well, a couple of things. I do remember the vendor that they got the quote from was in the audience previously. And I think he nodded his head that he was gonna honor that quote as it stood. So I do remember that. But I do think we need some kind of clarification because we can't move forward till we have feedback from them as to what they're willing to do so we can weigh what we're willing to do. But I'm gonna let Margaret and Dana make any comments before I get you guys to come up.
Well, I need to know what they're willing to do
Right.
before we really get into what we can do.
Yeah, don't, yes, I agree. Dana, you good? If y'all wanna come up, I knew that y'all were here to speak on this item. Margaret? Hit yours off. Absolutely. If you wanna swing that chair around, it's fine. Or split up. I don't know if you wanna do that. If you'll just say your name and your address for the record, that'd be helpful.
Brian Dixon, President of the HOA of Cool Springs East, 205 Bateman Avenue in Franklin.
My name is Jerry Wigger. I am an attorney, and I represent the HOA.
What's your last name?
Wigger, W-I-G-G-E-R.
Did you have something that you wanted to share that was maybe new information?
We really don't have any new information. I guess we're really sort of here on a fact-finding mission to find out what the city wants from us. Obviously, I know that you're looking for some type of contribution. Right now, we're fairly limited in what we can contribute at the moment. I think that I believe we sent a letter to the city, but I think somewhere in the neighborhood of, what did we come up with, Jerry?
The number is flexible, but it's not nearly as much as required in options 3, 3 or 4.
I mean, for us to, to even begin to think of something like that, I mean, that would obviously involve us to have some type of assessment on the community at large. And that would be very difficult for us to accomplish. I think that's sort of why we're here to try to find out, what it is that the city's exactly looking for. I mean, what does this commitment look like, or your contribution look like that you would like for us to see, or that and for us to find out what we can do.
Okay. So I'm not sure whether you sent a letter recently to the city?
I believe I did.
Okay.
I'll have to check.
I don't know if I've seen that, and
Okay.
I'm not sure our engineering folks, so if
Okay.
you could help us with
I'll
tracking
get
that down, that would be helpful, because
Okay.
I wasn't aware of anything in that regard. And I think we're just trying to look at, one of the things we heard you say was you're expending money every year to deal with different various tree issues. And the thought was, you're already putting some money into a short-term solution. We're looking at a longer-term solution, and how do we maybe do that in some level together? And so I don't know what your capacity is, but it'd be great to partner, since we're outside of what we have in our funding zone, to look at how it could help us get there.
As far as the special assessments would be concerned, I can tell you that the first question I'm going to get from everybody in the association is, why are we taking care of this, the removal of the trees, when the trees are clearly within the city easement area? And that's going to be a difficult hurdle for them to understand. And that's another thing. I mean, if you can explain that, to give us something to take back to the membership, because otherwise the membership is just, these special assessments, I'm sure you know, have got to be
Been
approved.
through there, yes, I've been
Yeah.
down that road.
And unless we have good reasoning behind that, members aren't going to vote for it. So that's another,
Yeah.
if you could help us to understand why the association is responsible for the trees, when the trees are clearly within the easement area.
Well, an easement is not ownership. So I think that's a difference. And the flip side to that question is, it's a fairly localized drainage area. I mean, it's got a little broader area than your neighborhood, but it's not a community-wide facility. And so the flip of that is you're asking the rest of the residents to pay for a more localized issue. And how it fits into a broader drainage or stormwater network would be the question, because we're using utility fees to help pay for it, that are paid for by residents
Greater
across the
Washington.
community. So that, I mean, that's the balance. That's not necessarily an argument one way or another, but that's what we weigh out when we look at these things. Is it a broader benefit to the community for us to allocate resources from the utility that all citizens pay into versus what you might maintain as part of an HOA or a neighborhood that's part, there's a balancing there that I think we're looking at. So I don't know, there might be some more specific from a legal standpoint we can provide you. I'm not gonna attempt to do that today, but we can try to give you a little more information in that regard. I don't know if engineering or stormwater has any other insights on that.
Well, and not to sound snide, but, I mean, I did just come from the courtroom. But, I mean, common sense would say that if you've been handling this piecemeal as you go, issue by issue, it's almost set a precedent that you do believe it is your responsibility. You know what I mean? And I think it was proven in the last time we met. I know Alderman Berger has worked very closely with you guys, and we're appreciative of that. But, I mean, we are an amenable group of people that love to try to work with everyone. But when we have, to prioritize the things that affect, as Eric said, the entire community, it's hard to go back and cherry pick after the fact, things that aren't on our initial CIP.
One other thing that might help us both, and I may be speaking a little bit out of turn, so staff, help me out here. I don't know that we have a lot of detail on the quote that you have for tree removal. And one of the questions we would have, because it's our understanding it's coming through your property manager.
Actually, it's a.
Is that correct?
No, it's a company that's loosely associated with Gertner Property
Okay.
Management, but it's not the actual property manager.
I guess what I would want to see, and I'm just laying the cards on the table, is there any additional, markup or costs added to there by Gertner or anybody else? Do we know that what we're getting is the work directly, or there's not any other kind of administrative or management fee added onto that might be unnecessary? If we could figure out a way to work more directly with who's doing the work, could that save us all some money? I don't know the answer to that. I don't think we have seen enough detail to answer that authoritatively to get a sense that we're getting the right value for the work that's being done. Now, by the same token, we also know we struggle like crazy to get somebody to do that work. So we don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth here, but we also want to understand, especially if there's a couple different parties involved, how those costs are being figured or allocated. Is that fair? Okay.
I have a question. When I look at the map of the subdivision, and you see the red lines, could you go to that one she is working at, Jonathan? Do you have it?
Which,
Yep, is this it?
You want the red?
Oh,
She wants
that's
that. You just there.
This
Yeah,
is
there
what
it
I
is.
want.
there you go.
Okay. Are the only properties that are,
Are you on?
Is your mic on?
I'm sorry. I got so much
We have
stuff.
some people that are really particular about
Are the only properties that are affected backing up to this red line right here?
No, ma'am. If you actually go, there's a presentation that I forgot the name of the company, but the engineering company that was hired to do the initial analysis, it actually extends on beyond that, down further. And the water, of course, because there's a retaining pond further down.
If you did this as a neighborhood, if you had your special assessments, that would include everybody in that subdivision?
Yes, everyone in that subdivision that's connected on that, everyone on that map is within our borders.
All right. How would they respond to a rather hefty assessment for these properties along this ridge here?
That's difficult for me to say. I can tell you that from, the showing that we had at the board meeting, the last board meeting, that segment of the population that came from our neighborhood was not just people living along that line. I mean, we had people from on the other side of the community. We had people from the center part of the community that are still a good ways away from this. So there's quite a bit of interest in this project across the neighborhood. And again, this is something we've been working on a long time, that has been communicated to the entire neighborhood for a number of years.
The reason I'm asking that is because often when there is a certain element of the subdivision that's going to receive the improvements, the people on the other side don't always buy into that. So you can imagine how we up here have to deal with the whole city
Sure.
when something in a neighborhood wants to be, that's not going to affect everybody in the town. So that's the reason I asked that question.
I guess the reason that we've been on this issue for such a long time is that we're very concerned about the liability of it at the end of the day. And it's been an ongoing issue where it has been a worsening problem. Our homeowners that do live along there are reminded about it every time there's a major storm. When you look at the amount of time and effort that's been put into this, the amount of focus that has been given to it by the city, there's clearly, to us, there's clearly a desire to have this project done to remedy what I feel like are some past errors by both the city and the original developer of the community. And I think that's a big part of why there is interest in fixing this problem.
Thank you.
And I will say, very briefly, the association has asked me what is the potential liability to the association and to the city should something unspeakable happen to a child. And I've done the research, and there's plenty of case law concerning this type of situation when the association has notice of a problem that is on their property, and somebody is injured, a child is injured. That's something that kind of brings to the forefront this question of, let's get it done. Let's work with the city as much as we can to get this done as quickly as possible to relieve both of us from potential liability.
Yes.
Does the infrastructure work for the purpose that it was designed and constructed?
Yes.
It looks like,
May I ask, when you say infrastructure, what exactly are you referring to?
this drainage, this infrastructure to conduct water off from one side to the other of the property.
It was natural with the property, and it's no different than it's a wet weather conveyance is what we would call this. It's no different than a stream or a river. In our perspective, non-legal opinion is we can't possibly maintain every tree along every stream, every wet weather conveyance across the entire city, that it is the HOA's property. The trees are their responsibility, while we're willing to try to roll our sleeves up and figure out how to fix some of the erosion long-term with board's approval, that the trees are not at all our responsibility.
But okay, let's just look at it for a moment like a regional or sub-regional stormwater asset. It works for that purpose.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then it looks like 58% of the area that is served by this infrastructure is actually outside of this HOA.
Correct.
So I think just throwing this out there, there's potentially one other option, which is the city creates an assessment district for everyone that is benefited by the existence of this stormwater wet weather conveyance and, and levies the charge on 100% of the people that receive the benefit. I'm not advocating for that, but it does sound like an option, because less than half of the people who are served by this infrastructure or wet weather conveyance are in this HOA. Now, that's not something we've done, but, I mean, as we go forward and we get more and more of this kind of thing, but I mean, I think it's reasonable to ask the people that benefit from it most directly to chip in. I understand that you have a finite number of homeowners, and it's a rather significant project. But
Some of that's out of the city, right?
The 58% is outside the city.
That's in Brentwood.
well, then we'd have, perhaps we do an
Interlocal.
interlocal agreement. I do know one of their Brentwood commissioners. I'm certainly not speaking for her.
You learn not to do that?
No. But, I mean, that's an option, you know, depending upon how big a problem the people around there perceive this to be. The other thing is, I mean, if the HOA is unable or unwilling to chip in, so to speak, then it goes in as a $1.3 million ask in our CIP, and we see what kind of support it gets the next time we rank and fund.
Is there a motion on the table?
If you would, I'd suggest, we haven't seen this letter, so I don't know what's in there. If we could track that down and maybe look at that, that sounds like it might have some description of what the neighborhood participation might be in the project, if I heard that right. I don't know.
Yes,
Some
sir.
concept. I'd like to review that with you and maybe talk a little bit about that. There may be some options to look at, you know, if there's a certain component in your HOA budget or whatever over maybe a multiple year timeframe. I'm just sort of thinking out loud of some ways that we could structure this to facilitate some level of partnership, and then bring that back to the full board at a work session.
I mean, I could definitely say that something along a multi-year time frame would definitely be more acceptable and easier for the board, because we could be able to build it into our current budget based on, you know, what, like you said, what we're already spending to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Margaret, you had a question?
How long has this condition been this way with these pictures?
I believe those pictures are from 2014.
Some date back, yeah.
Yeah, those are 2016,
16?
but yeah.
I'm sure that the erosion has gotten
It's
worse,
been continuous,
But-
yeah.
Yeah.
based on the survey, this was there whenever they developed, the original developer developed. And it's always been a wet weather conveyance for many, many
Yeah.
years.
Well, you know, we are getting a request from residents who move into areas, and forever there've been situations like this, and they want it fixed. And, you know, having lived here forever, I've known the situation, and I don't know that we can come in and fix everything like people want it. You know, if it was like this before, you know, we knew it was like this, and maybe it just gets worse. That's no answer. That's not acceptable, I understand. But that's sort of reality. And I don't know what you can do to fix this. I don't even think 1,000, what is that?
1.3 million.
1.3 million can fix it, you know, the way it looks right now.
Well, the engineering company had actually done a report back in, I believe that was 2014, when that original report was drafted. And that report had laid out, I believe, 4 or 5 different options on how they could deal with this. And the one that they've chosen, which the stream remediation, was one of those options within that report. One of the most expensive options in the report involved putting a box culvert down the entire stream. Obviously, I think that would be difficult to accomplish given today's environmental regulations. But that was one of the options that were given in the report. And I believe that at the time, that was around $1 million just for that alone.
So again, is there motion?
Actually, I did have one other thing to add regarding your question about, why this project continues to come up and why it's not, and why, why we feel that the city should be involved. And I understand that there could be a lot of people with a lot of different things like this where they want the city to fix it,
They're
but
sitting right behind you.
perfect. At the end of the
And
day,
over there.
at the end of the day, from, the information that I have, is that the city released a bond on these streams, to the bond that the developer had to maintain. They released the developer's bond. And so that's why that the city has a responsibility to care for this stream. That's one of the arguments that's been used. I believe there's also another argument surrounding, how it was identified on the documents as well, of why it's, the city's responsibility. And that's why we've pursued.
Wait a minute, the city's
For clarity.
responsibility to do what?
For clarity, we bond infrastructure that's being constructed to make sure those improvements are done as approved by the planning commission, board of mayor and aldermen, whoever, that infrastructure gets done appropriately. And I've looked at all the design plans associated with this, and there was no improvements to be completed on this wet weather conveyance anywhere. Now, the detention pond was part of the bonding, and that got completed and
But all
built
this
accordingly.
works for the purpose that it exists.
Yes, sir.
But there wasn't a bond to build something. They didn't
Right.
build something, there was a creek there.
But even if there were,
Anything like that.
even if there were, it functions.
Yes, sir.
So,
I'll make the motion that we push this maybe 2 months so that the staff can look at that letter and see. I mean, I want to help, but I promise you, there's way more projects out there than there are funds. And some of them are must-do. Some of them are broken. So
so do we need to bring it back to this body?
We
to
can bring
work
it to you, or we can
session?
bring it to the board at a work session.
I would rather get everybody in, not to
Okay.
take.
Well,
to
yeah,
vote
eventually
our-
we're gonna need purchase.
So there's
I
no
mean,
reason for it to stop here
No.
and then go to work session.
You only
I
got
think
half
we
of us here
just-
on any given day.
So April work session options are gonna be the 14th or the 28th.
I move that we move it to the April 14th Board of Mayor and Alderman work
We'll
session
bring it to the work session.
with a request that staff
And it might just
Evaluate-
be, here's the.
track down the letter
deal that
and,
we have, we'll get the letter, and whatever we can figure out in terms of what a partnership might look like, and then you can give us some direction from there.
So do I have a second on that motion? Margaret?
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Second.
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate you.
Item number 3, consideration of change order number 2.
Madam Chair,
What about, yes, sir?
probably no vice mayor in a hoodie ever said Madam Chair, but
Yes?
there are people here on, hey, what's up? There are people here on other, if the chair might entertain, moving
I'm
to
seeing
items
you
that there are,
Teaching me new tricks.
yeah, that there are people here on other items that don't need to sit through all the fascinating and riveting things that we're gonna do,
So I'm
items
gonna
3
shoot in
through
the dark
10.
and say we
12
move on
and
to which
13.
items in particular? Item number 12 and 13?
I think 12 and 13
Is
have.
that why you all are here today, 12 and 13? Yes. Awesome, so we're gonna do what
don't like
Vice
final
Mayor
change orders on
suggested.
tennis courts? Come on.
So item number 12 is a presentation on Fieldstone Farm sidewalks. Paige, is that you or Lisa? Or both?
That is neither.
That's neither.
Oh,
That is,
Go.
that is another HOA.
okay.
Could you pull up the overall plan?
You wanna go right there?
Just for,
Again, if you'll just state your name and your address so Linda can have it.
Dan Thomas and 235 Winter Hill Road, Franklin, Tennessee.
You have something for us?
I brought gifts.
can't take it.
We can't accept gifts. Thanks.
Folks, thank you for giving me a few minutes this afternoon to speak on the Fieldstone Farm Sidewalk Initiative. I'm Dan Thomas again. I've been at Fieldstone Farms as a resident with my family for almost 4 years, and have been appointed by the Board of Directors, the HOA, at Fieldstone Farms as the project liaison with the city. And several board members are actually here right now. We have the president, Susie Roholt, front row there. We have the landscape committee director, Dennis Pett. We have John Babb, he's the secretary on the far right. And then 2 members of the management company, we have Ellen Higgs and Michael Velker. Dana told me 5 minutes, so let's go. Fieldstone Farms HOA would like to partner with the city of Franklin on installation of 2 miles of sidewalk on Lexington and Fieldstone parkways, the main thoroughfares through which people in Fieldstone parkways move. Project cost about $400,000. Fieldstone Farms HOA commits $200,000. Fieldstone Farms, for those who don't know, has 2,137 homes or 6,000 residents. That's 7.5% of the population of the city of Franklin. Hunters Bend Elementary School is on our premises, 500 students. Walkers, joggers, cyclists, and even drivers would benefit, and here's why. You can't see a thing. Lexington and Fieldstone parkways, for the most part, go east to west, and it's blinding sunlight for 45 minutes morning and night. And for one stretch, it's almost a half mile. So if you're going 30 miles an hour, the posted speed limit, going along there for almost a half mile, that's almost 60 seconds where you can't see a thing. And then people are zooming around. They're not doing 30, they're doing 40 or more. And so you put those drivers with all these people 12 months out of the year, and we have a disaster in the making. So,
I'm sorry, in that top
Yes.
left already, the sidewalk? In my mind,
question.
Fieldstone has sidewalks.
good question. So on the, we're talking about the west side of Hillsborough Road. So Lexington is only on the west side, and Fieldstone is both east and west. Fieldstone on the east side has sidewalks. Fieldstone on the west side does not. There are 2 small sections on Lexington Parkway where there are sidewalks for probably maybe 300 feet. 2
So,
small sections.
Quick question, is Lexington the one that's furthest away from the public's going?
That's correct.
north?
The
Okay.
farthest north, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that's, Lexington is the one that actually has, that has the pool, the
Gotcha.
clubhouse. and
You
then
see my
Fieldstone-
question, because I see a sidewalk in that
Course,
top picture,
yeah.
I'm like, wait a minute.
And when Dan's done with his presentation, we've got a map that kind of shows the whole
Okay,
thing.
great.
Cool. By the way, if you'd like to, when we're done here, at the bottom of the handout, there's a YouTube link. There's the, essentially the project. I drove through it for a minute and, sped it up so you can see it, the whole thing. This is in your handout, so we're not going to spend more than 20 seconds on this. There's 4 panels of it. This is the breakdown in detail of what the proposal is. Lexington Parkway needs sidewalks on both sides to incorporate, to not waste, but to incorporate those 2 small sections that already exist. The red little lines there, those are ADA ramps. And then the pink equal signs, those are median cut-throughs. There's some concrete median that will have to be cut. So this is another section of Lexington that runs into Fieldstone. And then this is Fieldstone, would only need one side of sidewalk because there's a walking trail on the other side. And this goes farther down and links up to the elementary school. So it goes right to Hillsborough Road. Nearly 10,000 linear feet, which is roughly 2 miles. Okay, we got construction company estimates from 5 companies. The middle one gets your attention, but I requested references and heard crickets. So we move on to the bottom 2. And the one at the bottom is most interesting because Mark May of May Construction has done work in Fieldstone Farms a lot and for the city of Franklin. So he's been vetted and he does a great job. Here is that estimate. You have that, so we won't spend any time on it other than to see on the left that the official estimate is 390, but he said that's all inclusive except for cutting off noses, cutting off the concrete of islands where necessary, and that would be necessary in some instances. So we estimate about $400,000 for this project from a guy who does a great job. Paul, you're in my presentation. I've talked with Paul a couple of times, Director of Engineering, and he said when funding plan is established, he'll approve the project quickly. And just a matter of coincidence, my next door neighbor used to work here as the Director of Engineering, Eric Gardner. So he hired Paul, as I understand, and they have both agreed to work together to look at the plat, approve this. No need for a survey team or an engineering report. So we save some money and some time. I talked with Derek a few times, the senior road inspector, and he says both KCS and May Construction, the bottom 2 options, would do excellent work. He will walk and evaluate the project once approved and work closely from start to finish with the chosen construction company. And then just for fun, I called Charlie Warner. And I said, hey, Charlie, how many speeding tickets have you folks written in the last 5 years? And I built this presentation back in September, and he said, leading up to September of 2019, nearly 400 tickets, an average of 17.5 miles an hour over, and a top speed of 58
During
miles
what
an hour.
time frame?
I don't believe that.
Last 5
I believe the top speed would be higher.
Tick-
Well,
t-
that may
top
be the
ticketed
top
speed,
ticketed
yeah.
speed. That is not the top speed.
Yeah. I have the spreadsheets if you'd like to see them.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
They did not catch the worst offender.
So in summary, May Construction is $400,000. Fieldstone Farms wants to partner jointly with the city of Franklin. You guys can leverage your city funds, our city funds, $200,000 each. And this would eliminate a major safety vulnerability for the 6,000 residents of Fieldstone Farms and visitors.
Well, thank you for
Questions?
your presentation.
Madam Chair,
Absolutely.
so there's a couple things that can you pull up the, so there are sidewalks and paths in and around Fieldstone Farms. We would never probably let Fieldstone Farms be built the way it is today, because the main thoroughfares, Lexington and Fieldstone, are notable for their absence of walkable sidewalks. There are some paths on the backside of some of the I call them horse fences, but they're patchy and they don't really connect well. They don't really provide any way to be a pedestrian with going somewhere. So while you can walk from my house to, say, Publix on a sidewalk, you're not nearly going the direct route. And there's not a good way, for example, for me to walk to the pool on a sidewalk. And so what you end up with is you end up with a lot of people walking in the street and in the gutter. But by putting 2 miles of sidewalks in, you're accessing many more miles of what's already part of the city of Franklin's walkway,
Yep.
green space walkway with the tunnel that we spent a lot of money on. And I don't think you're ever gonna have the chance to build 2 miles of sidewalk for $200,000 anywhere else. There, as our presenter said, it's 7,000 people, an elementary school. He did not mention the daycare center that's there that probably has 50 or 75 kids a day. Any doubt about the utility of sidewalks here would be resolved by simply going out there and looking at what happens all day with joggers, strollers, and whatnot. I'm an advocate for this, not just because I live there, but also because this is the kind of thing where you have, this would be hard, and I told them that this would be very hard to get any traction on if they were just sitting here saying, give us $400,000 worth of sidewalks, please. But when you can get 2 miles of sidewalks for $200,000 worth of tax money, that's a pretty good purchase. So, the other thing about this one is that there are vast swaths of open green space grass. There probably won't be any kind of hiccup in the construction. You could probably go out there with a bobcat and scrape off 8 inches of topsoil, throw down your base gravel, and start putting concrete in. The only potential trick in this thing is utilities, but we have sidewalks over utilities all over the place. So as far as like design, there's next to none. I could do this, so,
Oh, you want to bid on it?
no.
Eric, you had.
So, yeah, let me just, and I had the opportunity to talk to Mr. Thomas about this as well, and really appreciate the partnership. And as you know, we fund a component called Sidewalk Gaps in our ongoing capital program, part of Invest Franklin. So this could fit in that category. My only caution would be we need to look at any potential interferences. We've done enough sidewalk projects to know sometimes they're not as simple as they
Nothing
appear on
is
the
as simple,
surface.
yes.
So that would be the only thing I'd want to have an opportunity. The companies you got bids from in May is one of our contractors, I believe, in terms of our on-call paving or sidewalk.
Yeah, they're our current on-call contractor for any kind of concrete work in the city.
So that's good. You've got the right people who've looked at it. I would just want us to be able to verify that there aren't any interference with utilities that add complexity to this. I don't know if we've looked at it enough to know for sure. That's what I would want to verify.
And I think that's the ask,
yeah.
is that put this on maybe the next meeting, and in the meantime, have staff and maybe the would-be vendor coordinate to just
Vet everything.
to rule out any issues. If the project becomes a $1.2 million or $1.3 million problem, that's different. But if it's really a $400,000 project, I think we should give serious consideration to it.
The other thing I'd want to do, and I agree with you, the other thing I'd want to do is just look at what else we've got in the pipeline for that sidewalk gap money and see where that is. This would obviously use a significant portion of it. And, if we've got other things we're also working on, can we look at a phasing or adding some additional dollars to getting it done outside of that program? So those are the kind of things I'd want to look at from a kind of a budgeting standpoint. Just validate the cost and then look at what else we've got in that category of those already identified dollars for this type of project.
Absolutely. I wish everybody would come to us with projects where they were willing to pay half. That would be a perfect world.
So, yeah, we should be able to bring that back to next month's CIC with a more definitive answer on those questions and then decide how we move forward.
Yes, ma'am. Margaret?
This sounds like a good deal for everybody concerned. I happened to be on the board when Fieldstone Farms was developed, and the developers did not want sidewalks. They wanted the trail system, which was granted. I do think it's a good thing, and I know it's needed, but since this is not on our projects, it's not even on our list, we've got people on Eddie Lane that are really, really devout about their wishes for a sidewalk and to the park and to town. And I know that's a big step, but that's not on our list either. And if we're gonna put this on our list, I think definitely we ought to consider
Yeah,
that.
Eddie Lane is a project we had on your CIP list.
I couldn't find
We
it.
can bring that back. I think we did look at that. My memory of it is a more involved project
It
than a
is.
sidewalk gap project.
It is.
It is a significant cost. So there are ones that are more like this, that are more like a gap project where it's fairly straightforward, and there are others that have much more to them. The Lewisburg project was one of those we thought
Yes.
might be a gap, and then we looked at how expensive it was, and it starts pushing over $1 million. So that falls outside of the realm of what we'd call a neighborhood sidewalk gap. I think Eddie's in that category, but we can revisit that and share that with you as well. And this is part of looking at where we put those dollars. But the gap money is in your budget. It's just where we allocate it
I
to
understand.
these types of projects. So.
The biggest thing to think about is, as Eric stated, these are the small amounts of money, quick wins, and you're really focusing that on where there's curb and gutter already and enough right-of-way. This is checking those boxes. Eddie Lane, a lot of right-of-way would be needed, and a lot of utility work would be
And drainage issues.
involved.
Yeah,
in
Eddie Lane
drainage
would be
issues.
more like doing the Highway 96 sidewalk.
It's a lot like that. It's a lot like the
It's like what
Murfreesboro Road
started as a
project.
nice little project, and then
Yes.
it started getting into the millions, and
And,
then.
and with Eddie Lane, the original thought there was, because the road is so narrow through there, we were gonna rebuild the entire roadway when we did the sidewalk, because otherwise, if we put sidewalk in, there's a potential you could go put a multi-million-dollar project sidewalk in, then you come back, rebuild the roadway, and the sidewalks tear out.
Yeah. So, motion?
My motion is to put this on next month's
bring it back in
CIC
March.
with a follow-up report between staff, the vendor, and the HOA.
Second.
All right, first and second, all in favor say aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Just again, please take a look at that YouTube link. It'll show you what's going on finally.
Are there bloopers?
Probably, because I put it together.
Well, you're
an hour
selling
ago.
it awful hard, so I was just asking.
Yeah, and finally,
use it.
this is not about convenience, this is about safety, and that's why we're here today, so thank you.
It's a great project.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, item number 13, I'm assuming is the most next important. Discussion concerning Morningside Detention Pond. Paul? Jonathan? Welcome, gentlemen.
This issue's been around for a while. I'll do my best to try to give you the history associated with what I know. So you have the Brentwood Point development here, and then you have the Morningside development here, and then this is the pond that's in question. Both developments were under the control of one single developer at the time. And so what occurred essentially is the Brentwood Point Pond got built on the Morningside subdivision located right here. And Morningside went first, built this pond for Brentwood Point. They ended up putting in a head wall. That head wall was eventually supposed to be removed by Brentwood Point to do detention. The outlet control structure never got installed, was overlooked because it was essentially shown in two plans and they conflicted each other. But essentially, this pond serves 100% of Brentwood Point and almost no drainage in Morningside. However, there is a maintenance agreement that the developer signed that Morningside is responsible for the maintenance of this pond, even though it truly serves Brentwood Point. So it's a little bit unique, weird situation. This does not happen today, obviously. So my understanding of some of the issues out there is that it's holding a lot of water and there's development of wetlands. We could go back, and what we talked about internally was you can go back and install an outlet control structure. It's basically a catch basin with a small orifice. All it's going to do is make the wetland worse and detain water more. It should have been installed. We're also not having downstream impacts either. But that's a high-level summary of the problems that, as I understand them, and I know we have some gentlemen here to also talk about the problem.
All right.
Let me ask one question. Is this supposed to fill up and drain? Or is it supposed to stay dry, or is it supposed to hold water?
The intention is for it to be a dry pond, and
So it fills up when it rains hard and then drains off?
yes, sir.
Okay, and what is a reasonable time for us to expect that it would fill up and then drain off?
Every pond's different, but within 48 hours, it should be dry.
Okay, first question to these gentlemen, if I may. Does it dry in 48 hours?
No.
Okay. Does that mean that it doesn't work right?
It just means that it needs to have maintenance done to it. It is still functioning. It doesn't really function as a detention pond, period, because the outlet structure never got installed. So essentially, it's just a hole in the ground. The water bypasses it
Okay,
totally.
so unlike, to draw a distinction between the Mays Creek, this one wasn't actually constructed per the plans that we had approved.
It was constructed according to the plans of Morningside, but not according to the plans of Brentwood Point, if that
Okay.
makes sense.
Okay, and is Brentwood Point in Brentwood, or is it in Franklin?
It's in Franklin.
Okay, so it doesn't matter now, because this is how long ago?
Long time ago.
Long time ago. So
Over
I'm not
20
trying to
years.
lay blame on a person,
Yeah.
but it wasn't built the way we approved it,
Well, it was built originally the way we approved it.
on one plan, but not on the other.
Correct, and as I understand it, at the time, it was not holding water. I will state that these detention ponds are all over the city of Franklin, and almost always, they are platted as private maintenance of the HOA. Now,
Okay.
this is a weird deal, because the HOA that has
Does-
the maintenance of it.
Does this
doesn't-
pond not also receive runoff from any of those other properties to the north?
I'm sure that, I'm sure it receives some from the hillside. I don't know exactly. I didn't look at that. I looked more at the Brentwood Point drainage
Well,
system.
I've been over there. The
a
Brentwood
mountain.
Point is uphill by
Yes.
it's a steep uphill running right down into this, but it seemed like there was also a rise to the north that might,
I'm sure there probably is.
okay, so this pond is receiving water from not just Brentwood Point. It's getting all of Brentwood Point's water, but it's probably getting water from north of there as well. Okay.
Correct.
So we're here to talk about what solution? Is it another one where the city's being asked to contribute to a fix, or what?
Can I contribute something to this conversation?
Absolutely. If you'll say your name and your address.
I'm George
Yeah, it's on.
Hatfield, and this is Arthur Young. He's the president. Our problem with this is not only the fact that it's a retention pond right now, but the retention pond is not working because the water is going underneath the culvert. And it's been going underneath there probably for a good 5 to 8 years, according to the people that have been out there. This is a situation that is exactly could happen like happened over on Nippers Corner, where they lost 2 buildings because of the water going underneath the culvert for all those years, and you know how water is, it goes the way of least resistance. So we have a problem today that needs to be addressed. It's been brought to my attention by 2 different contractors that we should do something with it right away. This is something we have currently paid in Morningside. We have paid approximately $200,000 for drainage problems that were not done properly by the developer. This is the only area that we as association have not taken care of. Dana, you were out there and you saw the last wall that we put up that, and it strictly affected View, and we took care of their water. We paid another $20,000 to correct it. This is the only area that our association is not paid for that needs to be corrected, and we are just asking for the city to give us some help.
And does staff agree that the culvert doesn't, that the water gets out other than where it should?
I haven't personally inspected the site. What I've been told is that there is erosion around the head wall that has, just from normal erosion, and it just needs to be backfilled with some dirt. The pond needs to be raised up in elevation. It's just your standard, typical maintenance associated with any type of dry pond.
Okay.
There's nothing special or unique, as I understand. it.
So this is work that could be done by city crews, but it's private property. It's not our property.
Well, but well, I know, but neither was Jackson Lake, and neither was the place we just, Mays Creek, and neither are countless places that are in fact stormwater issues. So we're gonna have to decide as a city whether we're just gonna tell everyone no. If it's private property and we don't have a contractual obligation to maintain it, then we just don't even put these things on the agenda. Or we're gonna have to sort through them. And where we think that we can and should help, and when I say can and should, the things that, to my mind, factor into that are, what's it cost? Who's it benefit? How many does it benefit? And what are the equities of the situation in terms of how did we get here? As I understand it, there's been an estimate of $50,000 to,
We've gotten 3 estimates on them. The lowest one we had was 50, the other 2 were 52 and 55.
and what does that work entail?
That includes making it into a detention pond, but what they say they need to do is force the concrete down into the erosion
Okay,
area.
so
It does not,
okay.
it cannot be dirt, they say,
Okay.
and I'm just going with what they say.
I don't know about those specifics. I think that's where we need your help on kind of a policy guidance is, some of these are more localized in terms of impact, and others have a broader regional impact. I mean, Jackson Lake's an example. It was a broader area impacted. This is between really 2 neighborhoods, but it's really serving one neighborhood and maybe a
95%
hillside area.
95% of the water, according to what Jimmy Wiseman said, it's coming from the View.
It
We
is, yeah.
already have the other part that we take care of over on the other side. We get all their water over there on the other side too. I would just like to bring this up. This was sent to me by Jimmy Wiseman. He sent it to me April the 13th. I probably made about 13 trips out here trying to find out different things. And the thing was not built properly. And April the 13th, he sent me out here this picture, and he showed me where the buildings had been started. None of those buildings up there that we're talking about in Brentwood Point had been built. The ones in Morningside had not been built. So therefore, you can plainly see that that was a retention pond the entire time. It has never been a detention pond, never was. And that is obvious with the pictures that we have. And here's a picture that Jimmy Wiseman sent me in here. So all I'm asking, we're just residents. We're 265 old people out here. And how in the world, and I'll be honest with you, I've been a developer, and I know what's going on, and I listened to what was said before, and I understand everything that you're talking about money, and I understand the word about money. And I guess the only thing I'm asking, and I understand your budget, I'm just asking you to consider 265 people out here that have been paying out $200,000 already on errors that should have been corrected by the codes people, not the city. The codes were the ones that failed us. I've been a developer. I know what the codes do. Codes saved me money. They saved us a tremendous amount of money over here on Manor because we started a building and they were just putting up regular bathrooms and it had to be built for the disabled. And if he hadn't have stopped us, we would have had all that finished out at the end and we would have had to go in and tear it out, in other words, for it to be approved. I appreciate codes. When I built in McGavick Farm and Princeton Hills and all these other places, I took Doug, I think Doug's last name was Garrett. He's dead now, he died of cancer. He was the worst codes person. Nobody wanted him because he found everything wrong. And that's what I liked. I wanted that sub to be accountable.
Could we I'm going to make a motion that we ask staff to communicate, coordinate with this HOA to at least receive and review those estimates that they've gotten, to see if you think that that's a reasonable scope of work that they've proposed, that the contractors have proposed. We got to resolve this difference between packed dirt and inject concrete. And then I'd like, if possible, next month for us to have a better understanding of what it would take to fix this, because it's clear that however we got here, it does not work. It's clear to me that it does not do even the minimum of 48 hours of drainage. And if that's true, then let's figure out what it's gonna take to fix it, and then we'll have a conversation about whether and how the city might do that. And at some point, I agree, we're gonna have a larger policy discussion about, do we draw a bright line and tell any and all private property owners that we're not in that business? But until we have such a rule, I'm gonna advocate for at least evaluation of the projects on a case-by-case basis.
The other thing I might have us look at too is, and I believe we looked a little bit at what our crews might be able to do directly.
That's what I
And
mean.
describe that for you, not just,
Absolutely. As
Right, like,
an option.
if.
because they've got cost estimates, but those may not reflect what we could
What we
do
would
with
cost,
in-house crews.
right, but that's why I say, let's make sure whether or not it
Okay.
is inject concrete.
Okay.
I don't know if we have that capability or not, but if we do, and that's what's required, then maybe it's an in-house project and we look at
I'm
doing
looking at
that.
Steve and I can tell he's got a pretty good idea.
I think
Okay.
that's, with the information we were given, it could definitely be done by the city people. It would not be, it's nothing special. It's just building it
Could we
up
have
and
my
then-
motion is that we have a report back on
Let us give you
this
an
conversation
assessment of
next
that.
month.
Yeah.
We'll do
All
it.
right, Dana
Thank
made a
you.
motion, Margaret, may I get a second? Second. All right, motion first and second, all in favor say aye.
Thank you very much.
Motion carries, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
So moving back to the beginning, item number 3, I believe so. Item number 3, consideration of change order number 2, City of Franklin 2018-0252, final change order for the Jim Warren Park Tennis Court Reconstruction Project for an increase in the amount of $19,449.15.
This is just some additional paving that took place. We had bid items for it. It's just quantity overruns, trying to build the court, and we're
I
very
have a
happy with
motion, may I have a second?
the product.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Item number 4, consideration of draft amendment number 3 to the professional services agreement, City of Franklin 2015-0052, for the East McEwen Drive Phase 4 Improvements Final Design Project with Sullivan Engineering, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $82,589.32.
Well, since Bev's not here,
Yeah.
Let's
what we
don't
gonna
do
Surprise her when she
I'll
gets
move,
back.
I'll move approval.
I have a first, let me have a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Item number 5, consideration of draft amendment number 1 to City of Franklin contract number 2016, we got people now, 0299, for Embry Partners LLC Iron Horse Development Road Impact Fee Offset Agreement. Good afternoon, Vernon.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm going to let Paul, Jonathan, and David discuss this contract, but I did want to take just a second to introduce David Diaz, who's our new contracts administrator for those that might be watching. He's going to help us with delivering capital projects and also working on road impact and development types of impact agreements. So he's worked with Brad Canola from Embry Partners and Paul and our team in our finance department in this amendment, but I just wanted to take a moment to introduce him because you'll be seeing him talk about these in the future.
Hi, David.
Very good to be with you.
This is for the, we had a road impact fee offset to add a turn lane over off of Franklin Road at Mallory Station. The improvements are complete. The cost is a little bit more than what we had estimated. However, their road impact fees cover it. We've reviewed the contract, we've reviewed all the invoices, and we're recommending approval. We also have to make an administrative name change of the entity that we're reimbursing. It needs to match the agreement with the invoices. And so we're recommending approval of this amendment from $517,910 to $625,079. And happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I'll move approval.
I have a motion, may I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 6, consideration, thank you, David. Consideration to grant water and sewer availability for 1268 Lewisburg Pike.
I like this map, X.
All right, so this is, it's really loud. This is the old Henpeck Market. They have requested 3 SFUEs. They've requested approval, and we're agreeing with their approval. We're recommending approval. The interceptor crosses the back of their property. They've requested annexation, but they're requesting availability before that so they can go ahead and get the CO from Williamson County to open up.
So they,
Isn't that backwards though? Does it almost guarantee their annexation if we grant this?
well, is the request for annexation something that's happened since we last saw this?
No,
Yeah.
It is in process.
It's in process. Yeah, they've initiated it.
Okay, because I remember this came up, and I raised the question about, but this is another island.
The non-contiguous, yeah.
It is close but non-contiguous.
Okay, that's,
So this is just for sewer availability. So the
Go ahead,
inter,
let's not go down the rabbit hole.
I'm sorry?
You're saying let's deal with this issue.
So we've granted availability. The interceptor runs in the back of their property, and it was intended to connect
Okay.
at the time Henpeck Market onto the sewer.
okay,
Yes.
okay. All right, well, I'm gonna move approval,
All right, I have a motion.
but that is not a commitment to annex.
Correct.
I have a motion, may I have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
But I want to say something.
Absolutely, Margaret.
What do you mean it's not a commitment to annex?
Well, I'm still a little bit hung up, and maybe I'm the only one, but I'm still a little bit hung up on annexing these islands and creating a checkerboard of city. This property is not contiguous to the city.
Well, now, wait a minute. Doesn't it say, though, somewhere, I don't think I can get to it on this computer. Doesn't it say that when the time comes for them to be annexed, that they will agree to it?
They've already requested annexation.
That's not the issue. You frequently get hung up on people getting sewer that aren't annexed.
Yes.
Okay, fine. I'm hung up on annexing people with or without sewer who are not contiguous to the city limits right now.
I understand.
And making an
Okay.
island of city out there detached from all other cities.
And we have
Okay.
done it where we grant them sewer and we have them agree, or we grant them water and we have them agree to annex at our request in the future when it makes sense for the city.
All right, we can still do that
We
at
do
our
that still.
request.
We do that now.
Yeah, stay tuned for the next 3 items.
But, yeah, but in this case, this property owner has already requested annexation.
Okay, if we don't annex them, if they're not annexed, they still can get the sewer because it runs through their property. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm less concerned about people who are outside the city getting sewer. To me, those are not necessarily conjoined. I mean, if it's appropriate, if we have the infrastructure and it's a better idea than creating more septic systems, I don't get hung up on whether they're in the city or not, or whether we might compel them to be annexed. I'm just surfacing the issue of creating islands of city. And that's separate from this sewer issue. That's why I only threw, I mean, I parenthetically said, I'm not committed to annexing. It has nothing to do with the
Okay.
particular agenda
You're
item.
prolonging the agenda
I do
for something that has
understand
nothing
that.
to do with the
I'm
item.
answering a question that was asked of me.
I just think it's interesting.
I would think it would be rude to tell Ms. Martin to never mind.
Okay.
You can do that.
No,
So
I could, but I'm not
have a
gonna.
motion, may I have a second? Yeah, I got it from Margaret, so vote,
Yeah.
Aye.
all in favor
Aye.
say aye. All right, item number 7, consideration to grant water and sewer availability for 102 Gilbert Drive.
So this is outside the city, but one SFUE, but along the Henpeck Interceptor as well. So they are requesting approval. We're recommending approval with the condition, as we do all of these availabilities, that they annex into the city when we deem it appropriate.
When we were asked.
So just what Eric discussed, yeah. So we'll have an agreement that we'll have to bring in front of you at a later date.
Okay, I move for approval.
Oh, all right, I have a first, Dana.
Second?
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Item number 8, consideration to grant water and sewer availability for 402 Ellington Drive, which is across the street.
Same thing. So
It's going through their property as
along
well?
the Henpeck Interceptor, yep. Where there's a tap that's in the plans for them, so it's always intended for them to connect to the sewer.
One tap.
Yes.
Yes,
One tap.
for this address.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Item number 9, consideration once again to grant water and sewer availability for 107 Beach Lawn Drive.
So same situation.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Item number 10, consideration of a change order number 3 to contract number 2017-0264 with Kiewit Infrastructure South Company for the water reclamation facility modifications and expansion project.
So when we bundle kind of a bunch of field authorizations that we do, whether they be credits or additions, we bring that in front of you for a change order. So this is the compilation of all that. So it's a net deduct of 88,000, I'm sorry, 300.
All right, I'm first.
You had me at deduct.
Second, I guess.
It's a deduct, Margaret. You can't say no to that. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Item number 11, consideration of contract number 2020-0015 between the City of Franklin and CIA Infrastructure Associates for survey and design proposal for professional services of GIFT street water and sanitary sewer replacements.
So we've had some shifting of capital projects that we've done and not done, so we're gonna move this one into design. So this is the replacement of GIS between Columbia Avenue and Adams Street. The sewer is a 6-inch clay that we would replace with PVC. It's just kind of riddled with roots. And then it's a cast and iron water line, which we just generally like to move toward ductile iron as kind of a practice. So this is older infrastructure that's just on our capital list to improve. So we intend to do the work in-house once the plans are made.
Margaret?
I'll move for approval, but I want to comment.
Second.
All right, go ahead.
If you improve this and redo the pipes and the infrastructure, it probably will increase the water flow or the
The sewer
flow.
capacity, yeah.
What will that do to our upcoming project of Evans Street? All that
flows,
drainage
yeah.
that we're getting ready to redo? Will that affect that at all?
So we don't intend to upsize. We'll probably upsize the 6-inch clay to 8-inch just because that's our normal practice. But right now it's got a lot of blockages from roots and just broken
And that's a
clay
storm,
pipe.
that's a
I was gonna say,
stormwater
Evans is
project.
stormwater.
Yeah.
Well, isn't this gonna be a stormwater project too?
No, ma'am.
No,
This
this
is
is
not a stormwater.
sanitary
This is,
sewer.
this is sewer line,
Sewer and water.
sewer and water lines, yeah.
Okay.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And I am going to, Dana will be happy, just in light of time, because we had a longer meeting than normal, just ask if there's any highlights on the projects that you want to let us know about, or if y'all have any questions that you want to ask, instead of going through it line item by line item.
Yes, I do.
Go right ahead.
It's the Memorial Bridge, Margaret.
Where is it?
Where is what?
I mean, I don't want to be rude about this,
Bridge.
but
You can be rude. That's perfect.
it's a
Where
Where
is-
is the Memorial Bridge?
We received a copy of the preliminary plans from the designer. We're reviewing those, and we're gonna return those comments, and they'll finish the design.
Wait a minute. Are-
Finish the design?
Yes.
We've been working on the design, Jonathan, for 2 years.
No, ma'am, we have not.
Why
Oh,
not?
you're talking about West Main. I'm going Charles's Bridge? What are you talking about?
You know, West Main.
I would hate to not have my homework in your class.
We could,
I would have sat with you while you did it. Jonathan, how long has the design been going on?
Since right before the turn of the, right before the year turn from 2019 to 2020, we released the survey, because the final contract wasn't signed until October, I believe.
You didn't approve the project until
August of last year,
of 19.
the funding.
This was part of the CIP, and you did your final approvals on that in August of 2019.
And you mean the design didn't start
So
until
until we have
then?
money, we can't design.
The design didn't start till the first of the year because we did not have the survey yet.
it takes time to get the contracts in place, and we gotta survey it. Now that we have the design, there's also gonna be a utility phase and a right-of-way acquisition phase. We are impacting property owners. So we have 2 or 3 property owners we're gonna have to acquire property from, which we have appraisals that we also have to do. There's a little bit more
For the
work.
bridge?
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am. But we are working hard to get it
Well,
done.
we can talk about that. But I do want to ask you about Lewisburg Avenue, because the neighbors want to know where that stands. And you said that that's in design. Now, I'm talking about from the end of the present sidewalk, at least, aren't we going to phase that?
What got approved by the board was to design it all the way to Mac Hatcher, and that's what we're,
It was, you approved to design all the way from where the sidewalk currently ends on Lewisburg, all the way down to Eastern Flank Battlefield. That's the first phase of the project. The second phase was to go ahead and design, like Paul said, the rest of the way down from Eastern Flank to Mac Hatcher. But the first phase that we would focus on is the section from
But the-
where it ends on Lewisburg.
All right.
What's funded for construction, though?
The only
sidewalk.
thing funded for construction right now is the section from where the Lewis sidewalk ends on Lewisburg now to Eastern Flank.
Fine. Where is that?
You just approved that PSA for design as well.
Well, design goes all the way to Mac Hatcher.
It does, the design does.
But I'm talking about phase 1. I'm talking about that
Yes,
first
ma'am.
phase. You mean that
It's in
first
design.
phase is not even designed yet?
No, you just approved the
We're a
PSA
city,
about a
we
month
move
ago.
slower.
Well, you have to remember, you did not approve funding until August of 2019. We don't design things till you've approved projects. We don't go do designs for projects you have not funded.
And actually, this was approved later because the original design that was approved was just the short section.
Then we added, when we brought it to you.
It became a
You
$5
said
million
design
project.
more, let's take it down to Mac Hatcher, so that's what we're doing. We updated that design contract.
Correct.
To reflect that work. So just because we've talked about it for a couple years doesn't mean we're doing design, because we haven't made a decision to move forward with the project. You've done that now, you did that last August, and we've moved into design since then.
All
It
right,
is a
what-
big, complicated project. If you're, with the way it is today, it is a very big project.
All right, so what can I tell them?
That it's
A
being
year?
designed right now.
Well, I know, but don't we have some kind of timeline?
You know, if we're building in that phase 1, and I guess I'm a little bit unclear with what we're gonna build first, but that phase 1, depending on where you wanna go, I mean, that could take up to 2 to 3 years to design, acquire easements for a trail of that nature, to
And relocate
relocate
utilities.
utilities as needed. That is a big project. It is a very complicated, it's no different than the 96 project that we did from Mac Hatcher into downtown. And that had 30-some tracks on it that we had to acquire from. So it's a complicated project,
And this one's worse because it has CSX involved.
yes.
Any other projects we need to talk about? Go ahead, Dana. Motion to,
Move to adjourn.
all right.
Second,
All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Okay, so you do on their card.